My husband travels for work. Not constantly, maybe 1 week a month. Sometimes 2, but often enough that I've gotten used to the house being mine alone for stretches at a time. I'm not someone who has trouble with that. I've lived alone before. I know my house. I know its sounds. The way the heating system ticks through the walls in October, the particular creak of the 3rd step from the top of the staircase, the way the kitchen window rattles when a truck goes by on the road out front. These things are furniture to me. Background. Not the kind that wakes me up. This happened on a Tuesday in late November. My husband had been gone since Sunday and wasn't due back until Friday. I'd had a long day at work, eaten dinner early, and gone to bed before 10, which is unusual for me. I woke up at 2:43. I know the time because I checked my phone immediately, the way you do when something pulls you out of sleep and you need an anchor. I lay still and listened. The house was quiet. No particular sound that I could identify as the thing that had woken me. Just the ordinary nighttime stillness of a suburban house in late autumn. I got up to use the bathroom. Habit, not alarm. I didn't turn on the hallway light because I've walked that route in the dark enough times to not need it. Bathroom, back to bed. That was all I intended. On the way back to the bedroom, I glanced into the chair. We have a reading chair at the end of the upstairs hall, an old armchair my mother gave us, angled toward the window that looks out over the side yard. I glance at it every time I pass it at night because the angle of it in the dark has a way of suggesting a seated figure that it takes my brain a half-second to correct. I'm used to that. I've been performing that small correction for 3 years. But there was something on it. A coat. Folded, not casually draped, not tossed folded neatly over the back of the chair. Dark. A man's coat. The kind of long wool overcoat my husband wears. I stopped in the hallway, and I looked at it for a long time. My brain was doing the thing brains do when they are trying to find an explanation faster than fear can arrive. Maybe he came home early. Maybe I left that there. Maybe I'm still half asleep. But my husband's coat, his actual coat, was hanging on its hook by the front door. I had walked past it an hour ago when I locked up for the night, and I do not own a long wool coat, and I had not put anything on that chair. I went back into the bedroom. I locked the door, something I have never done in that house. I sat on the bed with my phone in my hand and called my husband. It was nearly 3 in the morning. He answered on the 2nd ring because that's what he does when I call at unusual hours. He was in his hotel room. He had not come home. He had not been in the house since Sunday. I told him what I had seen. There was a pause, and then he said, "Don't go back in the hall. Call the police and stay in the bedroom with the door locked until they get there." He stayed on the phone with me. The police came in about 12 minutes. They walked the entire house, every room, every closet, the garage, the basement. They found no one. All the ground floor windows were locked. The back door deadbolt was engaged. No signs of forced entry anywhere. They also found the coat, still on the chair, folded neatly. A dark gray wool overcoat, men's large. No labels, the labels had been removed. Not torn out. Cleanly cut away, as if with scissors at some earlier point. The officer who spoke to me said they would keep the coat as evidence and would have a patrol car make extra passes on our street. He also said gently, carefully, that they sometimes see cases where a person has been entering a home over a period of time without the resident knowing, and that sometimes items are left deliberately as a kind of communication. I stayed at my sister's until my husband came home. We had every lock rekeyed, a security system installed, motion lights on every corner of the house. The police never identified who the coat belonged to. No case was ever opened because there was no evidence of a crime, just a coat on a chair in a locked house. I think about that phrase sometimes. Left deliberately. As a kind of communication. I think about what it was communicating. I think about the fact that whoever left it knew which chair, knew the layout of my second floor, knew that I would walk past it in the dark, knew I would see it, and knew I would understand. That I was not, and perhaps had not been for some time, as alone as I thought. I want to say up front that I have a rational explanation for some of this. I want to say that, and I want you to know that having a rational explanation does not, in this case, make it better. I was 22 and living alone in a ground-floor apartment in a city I'd moved to for a job. The apartment was fine old building, high ceilings, original hardwood floors that announced every step. The kind of floors that make you feel secure because you know you would hear anyone moving through the space. I'd been there about 4 months when I started noticing small things. A kitchen chair that I was certain I'd pushed in, not pushed in. The bathroom door open when I thought I'd left it closed. The window above the kitchen sink unlocked when I was nearly certain I'd locked it. Individually, each one was nothing. Collectively, over 3 or 4 weeks, they started making me feel like I was losing my mind. I mentioned it to a friend when she came to visit. She walked through the apartment and pointed out something I had somehow not registered. There was a door at the back of my bedroom closet. Not a window. Not a panel or an access hatch. A full-size interior door set flush into the back wall of the closet, painted the same off-white as the closet walls and partially obscured by the clothes I'd hung there. It had a handle. It had hinges. It opened. I had never tried, but when my friend turned the handle, it opened onto a narrow, dark utility corridor that ran the length of the building. I called my landlord. He said the corridor was an old maintenance passage, that it had been sealed off for years, that the door should have been locked. He seemed genuinely unsettled that it wasn't. He said he would send someone. He sent someone the next day who put a new deadbolt on it, keyed only from my side. And I should have felt better. I mostly did, for about 2 weeks. Then one night I was lying in bed reading, and I heard something. From the corridor. A sound like a foot scuffing on concrete. Once. And then nothing. I lay very still. I told myself it was a pipe. I told myself it was the building settling. I told myself all of the things you tell yourself at 11:30 when you are alone and you have just heard a sound from a dark corridor 6 feet from your bed. And then I don't know what made me do this. To this day, I do not know why I did this. I said, out loud, into the dark, "Hello?" There was a pause. Not a long one. Maybe 3 seconds. And something on the other side of the closet door said, "Hello?" I have never moved as fast in my life as I moved in the next 30 seconds. I was out of the apartment door unlocked, keys in hand, barefoot on the landing before my conscious mind had fully processed what I'd heard. I called the police from the stairwell. They came. They went into the corridor. They found evidence that someone had been using it. A sleeping bag, a flashlight, a plastic bag with food wrappers inside, and a collection of small items that the police handled carefully and that I was not allowed to look at closely, but that included, from what I could see, several photographs. They arrested a man 2 days later. He had a key to the corridor from a previous access period, how the landlord couldn't fully explain. He had been using the space intermittently. The detective who called me was careful about what she disclosed, but she told me enough. He had been there multiple times, over multiple weeks, while I was home. So here is my rational explanation, the one I promised you. It wasn't supernatural. It was a person. A person who had been listening to me through a wall for a month, who knew my habits and my schedule and probably my voice, and who, when I called out into the dark at 11:30, answered me. I told you the rational explanation doesn't make it better. I meant that. Because every version of this story, the supernatural version, the real version, any version ends with the same fact. Something was on the other side of that door. Listening. Waiting. And it knew my voice well enough to answer it in kind. I am a light sleeper in the specific way that means I register sounds without fully waking from them. My brain catalogs things: a car outside, the refrigerator cycling, a neighbor's door, and files them away without bringing me fully to the surface. I know this about myself. It is mostly a neutral quality. It is why I know with confidence that no one came into my apartment that night. My front door sticks. Has for 3 years. Makes a specific sound, a groan and a pop that I would hear in my sleep. The windows were all closed. There was no way in, and no one came in. I want you to hold on to that. I was home alone on a Friday. My roommate was visiting her family for the weekend. I'd gone to bed around midnight, phone charging on the nightstand, door locked. At some point in the night, my phone showed 4:18 when I eventually checked. A notification woke me. Not a buzz or a ringtone. Just the screen light cutting through the dark. The kind that means a message. I reached for the phone. Still half asleep, muscle memory. Unlocked it. Opened the notification. It was a photo. Sent to me from my own number at 4:16 a.m. The photo was of my bedroom ceiling. Taken from below, from approximately the position of my bed. You could see the water stain above the window, the one I keep meaning to have looked at. You could see the corner of the curtain rod. You could see at the very edge of the frame, slightly blurred but unmistakably there, the top of someone's head. Dark hair. Close to the camera. Close to the bed. I sat up. I turned the light on. I was alone. The room was empty. Nothing under the bed, nothing in the closet, nothing. I called the police. They came and searched and found nothing. No signs of entry. No one in the apartment. In the morning, I took my phone to a tech support place and sat across from a young man who spent 20 minutes looking at my device with an expression that went from routine to careful to something he was clearly trying not to show on his face. The photo existed in my sent folder. Timestamped 4:16 a.m. Sent from my device. To my own number. He could not explain how a photo is taken and sent from a locked phone on a locked network to itself. He said he had never seen anything like it. He recommended a factory reset. I did the factory reset. I sent the original photo to my email before I did, because I needed to have it somewhere I could look at it. I needed to keep looking at it until I understood it. I have looked at it many times since. I have zoomed in on the figure in the corner until the pixels dissolve into noise. I have looked at the ceiling, at the curtain, at every detail I can extract from the frame. There are two things I keep coming back to. The first is that the angle is wrong for a selfie. If someone were lying in my bed and held a phone above their face, the ceiling would not be centered that way. The angle suggests the camera was held over the bed and pointed down, from above, aimed at whatever was beneath it. The second thing is what is not in the photo. My bed is in the frame. The pillow is in the frame. There is a depression in the pillow, visible if you look carefully, that is consistent with the weight of a head. My head, still on the pillow. While the photo was taken, I am not in the photo. I should be in the photo. Whatever is standing over my bed at 4 a.m, holding my phone, pointing it down, did not photograph me. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Some nights I think better. Some nights I think it means whatever was there was careful about what it left behind. I'm going to tell you this as straightforwardly as I can, because the straightforward version is strange enough without me adding anything to it. I live alone in a house I bought 4 years ago. 3 bedrooms, 2 floors, detached garage. Small town in the Midwest, quiet street, the kind of place where you know your neighbor's cars by sight. I work from home 3 days a week, which means I spend a lot of time alone in this house, and I know its rhythms intimately. On a Wednesday morning in early March, I was working at my kitchen table. Laptop, coffee, the usual. It was around 10:30. Daylight, quiet street, nothing unusual. I got up to refill my coffee. Walked to the counter, poured the coffee, walked back to the table. Sat down. Looked at my laptop screen. My work document was open. I had been editing a report, a long one. I'd been on page 14 when I got up. The cursor was on page 31. I sat very still. I looked at the screen. I looked at the clock on the screen, 10:47. I had gotten up at 10:30. 17 minutes. I had been at the coffee maker for 17 minutes. I had been standing at the counter 6 feet from the table for, according to the clock, 17 minutes. And in that time, someone or something had scrolled through 17 pages of a document on my laptop. I want to be precise about what I mean when I say 17 minutes. I don't mean I lost track of time or got distracted. I mean I have no memory of anything between pouring the coffee and sitting back down. Not a lapse. Not a moment of distraction. A gap. 17 minutes just not there. I checked the house. Empty. Locked. All the windows. All the doors. Nothing disturbed. I checked my laptop's activity log because I know how to do that, and I needed something to look at. The document had been scrolled consistently, deliberately, at a reading pace from page 14 to page 31, between 10:31 and 10:46. 15 minutes of scrolling. By something that had interacted with my trackpad at human consistent intervals. I have 3 theories, and I hate all of them equally. The first is that I did it myself. That I had some kind of dissociative episode, a small one, the kind that can apparently happen without any prior history, and I scrolled through my own document while in some altered state and have no memory of it. My doctor, when I described it, said this was possible. Unlikely without prior episodes, but possible. The second is that someone was in my house. Got in, somehow. Stood at my kitchen table and read my work report while I stood 6 feet away at the counter. And then left without my noticing. And locked every door behind them. The third theory I don't say out loud. I'll just tell you that there are some mornings when I stand at the coffee maker and I watch the table very carefully. I count the seconds. I make sure I can account for all of them. So far, I always can. But there is something different now about the way I stand in my own kitchen. A quality of attention I did not have before. Like a person who has been told a specific room in their house is not entirely trustworthy, and has decided that the best response to that information is to simply keep watching. I need to tell you the context before I tell you the thing that happened, because without the context, it's just a knock on a wall, and I need you to understand why it wasn't. I grew up in a house where my mother had a rule. A specific, non-negotiable rule that she explained to my sister and me when we were young, and repeated so consistently that it became something close to instinct. The rule was this: if you are in your room and you hear someone in the hallway, knock 3 times on the wall before you open the door. If the person knocks back 2 times, it's family. Come out. If they knock back with anything else, or don't knock at all, stay in the room. Lock the door. Call out from the window. She never fully explained where the rule came from. I assumed as a child that it was just one of her anxieties. She had several, all of them practical, and most of them reasonable. I followed the rule the way children follow the rules of adults they trust without fully understanding them. I was 29 when I went back to that house. My mother was in the hospital for a scheduled procedure, nothing serious, and had asked me to stay at the house for 3 nights to look after the cat and collect the mail. I hadn't stayed there since college. It felt comfortable in the specific way that childhood homes feel comfortable. Familiar in your body even when your adult self feels slightly too large for the space. The first 2 nights were unremarkable. 3rd night, I went to bed in my old room, which my mother had converted to a guest room, but which still had my old bed frame and the same window that faced the oak tree in the side yard. I woke up at some point in the night. I didn't check the time to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Not the cat. The cat sleeps on the kitchen chair and makes no sound I've ever heard on hardwood floors. These were the steps of something heavier than a cat. Measured. Stopping just outside my door. And before I could think about what I was doing, before my conscious adult brain could intercede, my hand went to the wall beside the bed and knocked 3 times. Muscle memory. 20 years of a rule I hadn't thought about in a decade. My hand just did it. There was a pause. Then, from the other side of the door, from the hallway of my mother's house at whatever hour of the night this was, 3 knocks. Not 2. 3. I did not move. I did not breathe. I lay in the dark of my childhood bedroom, and I listened to the silence on the other side of that door, and I understood, with a clarity that seemed to come from somewhere much deeper than my adult reasoning, exactly what my mother's rule was for. I stayed in that room until dawn. I did not unlock the door until I could see full daylight under it. I called the police before I opened it. They searched the house. Empty. All the ground floor locks intact. No signs of entry. The officer told me, with the patience of someone who has had this conversation before, that old houses settle, that sounds carry strangely through walls, that sleep can distort the perception of both duration and location of noise. I thanked him. I fed the cat. I called my mother in the hospital and told her everything was fine and that I'd see her when she was discharged. I didn't ask her about the rule until a few weeks later. Sitting at her kitchen table, over coffee, I told her what had happened. All of it. She listened without interrupting. She didn't look surprised. When I finished, I asked her, "Where did the rule come from?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "From the same night, the same house, when I was your age." She didn't say anything else. And I didn't ask. Because there are answers that don't make things better. And there are rules that exist because something once knocked back wrong. And whoever was in that room survived long enough to make sure someone else would know what to do. Even the darkest stories leave something behind. Stay with me. There are more stories.